You're tuned in to the Super Aussie Rugby Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another instalment of Super Aussie Rugby, powered by Intrust Super. There's some kind of music going on. I don't know what that is. In the meantime, that's Pete Perfume Playford there figuring out the wonders of this Facebook Live thing that we have going on. I'm supposed to be the IT moron around here, but mate, that was brilliant. Brilliant start.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
So, what a great introduction to our fine Brumby and Waratah winger, Mr. Peter Perfume Playford. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Thanks for having me, mate. Another week on Facebook Live, and I think shares in Facebook have gone up on the back of our huge attendance last week.
That sounds about right, mate. And mate, they're going to go up even more after this. Now, for those, all 7 of you who were listening last week, we
170.
I know we actually are starting to kill it just quietly. But for all of you who listened last week, may have noticed we're starting up a competition to put a little more incentive behind the tipping comp. Whoever comes first gets the phone and therefore Facebook account of the loser of the tipping competition. And between last week's winners and losers, Pete, why don't you announce who won and who lost, mate? We always knew it was going to happen.
I don't think I was successful.
No, I don't think you were.
Yeah, I think you've won. I've already had a few comments on my posts. So I'm not sure what you've written, but
well, so look, okay, so here we are. I've hijacked your post. What I thought I'd go with is, more than anything, just I'd like people to know about your sensitive side, and it would appear here that you've put a little poetry out into the world and written a little poem. Pete hasn't seen this yet, but what he's written on his Facebook status is, "My cries drift across the night ocean. As lonely as my heart, it finds no companion. My empty soul yearns for connection, to be devoured in blankets of purity. With what? With whom? Find me, love."
Oh God!
Oh, mate, I think it's very deep.
Yeah, very deep. People are going to think that's normal.
I know. So, well, mate, on that front, we are going to be checking in here or there on some of the comments. There's already someone's already only just put it up. Yeah. Someone's already just put holy without anything else up there. So we'll keep Silky. You keep checking in on those comments as well. But outside of that, let's strip. Let's rip straight into it, and then let's strip. Okay, so first up, the results from the weekend. Let's fly through these pretty quick because we've got some test rugby to talk about. Auckland Blues versus Queensland Red. In this tipping comp, mate, I thought you were going to come out to a flyer. You tipped the Reds to upset the Blues, and, mate, it nearly happened. They just got pipped at the end.
Yeah, look, I thought the Reds could do it. I thought they've had a bit of, their squad is better than what it's performing. So their squad's better than what they should be performing. So
they're a good team on paper.
Very good team on paper, and I thought they would have gone over to Samoa. They've got a lot of Islanders in their team, as do Auckland, and thought they would have come away with that. But a few poor decisions, and another one goes begging for another Australian team. So Auckland, they look strong, but for mine, Queensland had that game and they lost it.
Yeah, very much so, and that's part of the problem with us at the moment, mentally and up top. Game actually held in Samoa. Good to see, giving a bit back to Pacific Island rugby.
Yeah, but I heard the pricing was too high, which meant that the crowd wasn't there. But yeah, great initiative to take it over to the islands. They're a big part of our future. You look at the Australian team now. From the islands, you've got nearly 80% of the team.
Yeah,
that's
Fijian alone.
Yeah, that's right. But I think on the back of that performance, there's been an interesting announcement from the Reds today that they're not going to offer Rob Simmons a contract for next year. Or are they going to offer Leroy Houston? So they've released Leroy Houston of his second year.
Oh, you're serious?
And they haven't.
I thought this was another Pelicano job.
No, they've said that Rob Simmons won't be required at their club next year. They said they've got Isaac Rodder and Luke Hantui, and they don't think that that Rob is part of their plans, which is interesting because he's been offered an ARU contract for 2018.
Right.
And so he now no longer has a Super Rugby club. So other clubs out there, I think Melbourne would be one to pick him up on the back of announcing today Jeff Parling, the British and Irish Lion, and English player, has now signed with the Melbourne Rebels for next year.
Right.
So they'd be in the market, pick up another second rower.
That could really shore up their ranks in
two
in
senior players, which they need down there. But yeah, interesting that Nick Stiles has probably come out and said, look, I need to make change. I probably inherited a squad. Rob Simmons, let's be honest, isn't playing good footy. So let's go with the youth and let's release him. So big play by Nick Stiles, but I think he's going to need more than that.
Can I ask you a question? Just as a player, someone who's been there, does that often act as a motivator when someone like that who's played as many tests as he has and still has age somewhat on his side, all of a sudden the coach says, "No, you're not up to it," and drops him. Does that raise the standards for everyone around?
Yeah, look, it depends what he's like with the other players because you've got to be consistent, right? You've got to see some of those players and see, is Rob the reason why they're not performing that well? And if they're true to their word, then they need to get rid of Quade Cooper because he's also a part of the reason why they're not going as well as they should be, and look at bringing in another 10 because they've tried with McIntyre. They let Mac Mason go or often, maybe not let him go, but
and now he's just been called up into the extended Wallaby squad.
Yeah, so I think that they are around the 10 position, but then to sign Genia and say they want to free up some money to sign the young locks coming through, but then to be in discussions with Genia, it can work both ways. I think,
as you say, so long as there's that consistency and you're not calling it for one where it suits you and not calling it for another where it doesn't.
Yeah, and this year he had his chance to. He got some good signings. He got, George Smith, Scott Higginbotham back. He got Quade Cooper playing, so I would have thought he'd be in a much better position today than this. But he's making a decision. Maybe he's got the board's backing, so good luck to him.
Good, mate. On to the Chiefs versus Waratahs. Look, again, the Tars managed to score plenty of brilliant tries, yet couldn't stop the opposition from scoring more.
Yeah, this game was totally lost in the mental side of it. You saw the Chiefs rock up and they were willing. They were doing offloads. They were trying things. They had this sense of confidence as the Tars don't have it. There's a lot of self-doubt there, and they can sit there and say, no, things aren't just clicking. It's way beyond that. They are off the pace mentally. Rugby's played in your brain, and it's also played with your ability, right? And a lot of coaches don't train that brain, right? And training the brain at that level, because skill sets can be exactly the same, right? When you're playing professional rugby, the player that's this good is same as that good, right? Next to each other. But I think the biggest thing for mine is that the Chiefs are mentally stronger. New Zealand rugby is mentally stronger at the point of collision, prior to the point of collision. And I think from an Australian rugby point of view, that game highlighted to me the difference between what Australian rugby is or what Super Rugby clubs in Australia are compared to New Zealand, and it was purely in the mind.
And the more often it goes on, the stronger they get, because it just reinforces that belief that we're inferior, they're better. I'm almost, so much of me's hanging for the test matches to play them in the Bledisloe. Don't get me wrong, we'll probably get slammed there too, but it can't get any worse than at this Super Rugby level where we're yet to win a single game.
Well, that Tars squad on paper should rival every single Kiwi team out there, and I reckon the worst team on paper in New Zealand is Crusaders. If you look at their lists, around their 9s and 10s, they've got the least established 9 and 10 in the competition, but yet their ability to perform and their mental capacity to perform, I think a lot of our stuff should be around training the brain. When I was coaching back in the day, reminiscing for a bit, a lot of my moves were called around my theme and event. So we had Shakespeare as our themes and events, and my moves were called Othello, King Lear, because
it's very very rugby.
But it's to make sure that when you call a move on the field, your brain comes into action, right? Yeah. I'm not for calling a move black, blue, hippopotamus, because Australia needs to lift. Rugby is a rah-rah game. It is a game that's played with a lot more intelligence than rugby league, and that's not a bad point for rugby league. It's just a lot more strategic. It's like chess, right? In order to play chess, you need to be at a higher intellectual level in a skill set point of view. So I just don't think we're tapping into that mental capacity, what it takes. And I used to always say, you're not competing with just the Chiefs. You're competing with your girlfriend, Facebook, social media. Every bit of action that can get to you. Mm-hmm. You've got to make sure you can find space to get your players up for that 80 minutes, and they were gone.
Well, that's the interesting thing for mine, because where we're gone more than anything is in our defence. Now, the Waratahs defensive coach is Nathan Gray, one of the greatest defenders out there himself, converted that at Waratah and Wallaby level in that season with Checker, and now the same team under the same defensive coach are leaking record amounts of tries at Waratah and Wallaby level. And it just looks like it's between the ears. It looks like it's something up top, but it's got to make you wonder, how did Nathan Gray do it then and not now?
Look, I'm not an expert in defence, and I never claim to be. All I know is that defence is a mindset. I used to very simply say defence is about someone's in front of you, tackle them. Someone's over there, chase them and tackle them. If someone goes through, someone else tackle them. That's my limited ability in defence. However,
nice and simple. I like it.
But however, you need to build a culture. You need to have confidence. Defence is all around confidence, and also working with the people around you. So there are a lot of offloads and just denting the line. As soon as you dent the line, then you get in behind them. Then it starts to open up. Now, what New Zealand teams do very well is the simple philosophy of rugby. Rugby is not about beating 15 people. It's about stopping one person in the line. So you narrow it down to one person. You put 3 people on them. You go through, and then you create that opportunity. For Gracie, coaching ability doesn't change. Sometimes the players. It's a holistic thing,
Yeah,
I think
it could be linked in with it.
With everything around.
Coming from the top.
And the game's a lot faster when you're chasing points. And if you look at the stats, maybe it's they're just not connecting with the tackling, and that's hard to coach. That's more of a dropping issue.
We're going to be talking a little about coaching later on in the episode. There's been a couple of changes to the coaching ranks. One in the Brumbies. Speaking of which, the local derby of the round was the Brumbies versus the Rebels. In the end, a good win for the Brumbies, but not an overly glowing endorsement of Australian rugby.
I kind of disagree. I think for what the Brumbies have got, they are working the model brilliantly. They are picking apart teams. They've got the best defence in Australian rugby at the moment. They're lining up. They're not letting teams go through them. They're working hard as a unit. Having been down in Canberra, they always play on that, that poor cousin mentality that no one wants us. And I think they're doing great. Look, I've even got hopes that they could pick apart some of these guys in the finals, because the way they play, they're just starting to understand it. They're just starting to get a grip on how Bernie wants to play, and it's very strategic.
Well, I think they're playing great this season. I'm just talking purely from the weekend. They open it up towards the end, but a lot of, it felt like to me the Rebels were failing to create opportunities. The Brumbies were often failing to close them, and I reckon they'll even have a look at that. If they can, make that last pass or hold it, they will go on. That they can really push it come finals time. But I noticed a couple of things. Yeah, sort of around the fringes, they were looking quite dangerous. That traditional Brumbies little inside ball around the fringes was looking good, and their set piece play fantastic. But yeah, I thought, God, for a good 50, 60 minutes of that game, I was like, oh, God.
Well, you look at Melbourne, right? Melbourne have picked their squad, right? It's not year 1 for Melbourne. It's like year 6 or something. I've always said that what are they doing to further themselves down there? We can be critical because sitting behind a microphone, but in talking with Dan Parks the other day, you've got one of the best kickers in the competition in Depressini there, right? You've got a coach in McGahn, who's very defence-orientated. You've got a coach in Morgan Tuanui, who's one of the greatest rugby brains in Australia and has got a huge future. But if you haven't got the talent, the easiest way to play football is to reef it downfield, teach everyone to chase, put pressure on, and then just keep kicking it down there until you make a play. We had the Sydney Stars running very similarly. We had 30% possession in most games, and we came away with some points. So I think it's not necessarily saying we're going to play this way because that's how we think we're going to win. Play the way that your players can do. And we feel as though that the Melbourne are playing outside of their means. They can't pull off simple skill execution. They're 9 to 10 running of the play. It's all over the shop. So
yeah, but it just Sturzak has had a fall from grace. He came on the scene so strong, just not the same player.
Yeah, and I think it's a result of their forwards aren't really aiming up, but yeah, I think they'll look forward to this little break.
Lot to work on they will. They certainly will. And speaking of other Australian teams, and particularly talking about the Brumbies punching above their weight, the Force versus the Hurricanes. Force very unlucky, not unlucky. Don't get me wrong. Hurricanes better team and ran away with it at the end. But in terms of lifting that sea of blue over in Perth, they're really bleeding for the jersey and getting people behind them.
Oh, it's great. I think the Force have got what Australian rugby needs.
Yeah.
From a
it's ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is ironic. But with the announcement today of signing Jeff Parling, what does that say about the Force? Right? If Melbourne had come out there and made a big announcement on the back of announcing that Baden Stevenson will be CEO of Melbourne, so Andrew Cox is just stepping into a chairman role, not running the club, shows that they are intent on being in the competition next year, which would be a huge shame for the Force.
Without getting right into it, because we have covered this a lot, but at this stage, it feels like they're both going to be there, doesn't it?
Oh, look, it could be. It'd be but then at what stage does Pulver stand up and go, right, they're both there, I'm out? Because
well, if they're both there, he's got to walk. He's got to walk.
He's got to walk anyway. Yeah, and I think the whole board and everything's got to walk, and even a testament to this whole thing that I get frustrated about, make club rugby great again. Fair advertisement for the Rats and Marlins and Manly playing on Saturday. Huge crowd, great spectacle. The Rats winning it on the bell, saying there's all this tribalism, but I just don't think we're putting our eggs in the basket down there when they're not. If Nick Fordham's got all this bloody pull in the media, then help our codes up top. Elevate the game at the top, but. I think we're still going down the grassroots level, and you can see.
But aren't they feeding in? Isn't that part of the problem, that they're feeding in too much money and too much focus and too much attention to the top, and not enough support at the grassroots?
Oh, I think that Nick Fordham's got and the East President has got some great ideas on club rugby. They're doing some great initiatives, but help the greater good. If they want it, let them into Australian rugby and see what they can do. But I just think we're all over the place, and I hate a dysfunctional team.
Yeah,
and
there's
I
got to be
think
clear direction for the top. We're sitting there going, well, isn't it this? Isn't it that?
Yeah.
No one really knows what it is.
No,
and
and then you can see it in the players, because they're not even mentally up for the challenges. They say they are, but there's a 5% that everyone has to try and access to win a game of football, right? The Kiwis are at 4.5 consistently, and we're sitting at 0.5 to 1. You can see it. The guys just aren't up for that first kickoff. They're not ready for that opportunity. So, look, we can talk on and on about it, but I think
we can, but we'll do it right after this break. You're on Super Aussie Rugby, powered by Intrust Super. Welcome back to Super Aussie Rugby, powered by Intrust Super. I'm here with Peter Perfume Playford. We've just been talking all things last weekend's Super Rugby results. One last piece of Super Rugby news before we get into a bit of the Wallaby and British and Irish Lions action. Well, actually, before we even get to that, can we do a quick check-in on your Facebook page? Any love, any comments? I should jump on mine too.
Yeah, mate, I've got Johnny Tawaki saying holy, and it actually says C translation, and it says holy, so that's good by Johnny.
Good.
I've got a few people saying, are you okay? A few kisses. Someone saying the weirdness is strong, and someone saying zesty. I've also got a few personal messages. So to all those that are listening, this is not me.
Yes.
Although it sounds a bit like me. So.
The personal messages.
Yeah, they're personal, mate. and no, they're not asking you out for dinner, mate.
Yeah, mate, I had to ask, mate.
No, definitely not.
It's like, yeah.
That's all right. That'll be. I'll send an announcement to everyone. So,
what was it? The strangeness is strong.
Yeah, which is probably
the weirdness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good for me.
For everyone listening, it's well known amongst Pete's mates. He's a fair weirdo. And the funniest thing about Pete is, with a lot of blokes, mate, I reckon, like, you think they're weird, then you get to know them, you go, oh, no, it actually really makes sense. The more you get to know you, the freaking weirder you are. So I'll agree. Who wrote that? The weirdness is strong. Anyway, they know what they're talking about.
That's right.
Okay, so Dan McKellar named as the new Brumbies coach. So Larkham obviously departing for full-time Wallaby duties. How do you feel about that one as a call? I personally, I don't know much about Dan McKellar other than knowing he's the current assistant.
Look, he's a bit of a hothead, which is good. He's got a lot of passion.
Yep.
I think the quote that got me and hooked me onto it was the CEO of the Brumbies saying, "Look, we really want to promote that culture of looking after our own, promoting from within."
Yep.
Which I think he's done his time. He understands the structures. The hardest thing about when you bring someone in that has worked with the head coach is, do they just see it as a seamless transition? Do the players get sick of it?
Well, you would have liked that with Daryl Gibson from Checker, but no, it wasn't quite the case.
Yeah, it was different. But you look at also the All Blacks with the guys coming through. So look, I think it's a great appointment. I think it's a great advertisement for the Brumbies, and I think they're a strong organisation, and this appointment shows it.
And what do you think? So we're looking at the appointment of McKellar to the Brumbies. Any other thoughts? Are there any other coaches that you feel at the moment in Super Rugby that maybe, not that Larkham was booted, but any that maybe need to walk or fall on their sword?
Oh, McGahan's got to go. He's led, the Melbourne Rebels, down the wrong path. I think that, the culture's wrong down there. I don't think that they're playing for each other. They've got a better squad than what they're doing. So he really needs to go. Look, I think Daryl...
Can I just say, the Rebels, that's sort of more only really been this season where it's been a bit of a disaster, hasn't it? I mean, since he's come in, I thought they seemed to have a bit more of a steely resolve, and then that was 2 years ago. Then, last year, not great, but not bad, considering the talent he's got to work with.
Yeah, look at the player progression, though. You look at, say, Nick Sturzaker.
Can't argue with that.
Nick Sturzaker's gone down. You look at Reece Hodge.
Even
he's
Debrasini, you were talking about all the talent.
Gone down. He's just signed over with Suntory.
Yeah.
You had Ben Meehan, who was good, and look, it's not a reflection of just McGahan, but...
No, it's actually a really good point, because it's true, you had guys like, when Caden Neville first came on the scene, he was going to be the new this, and what's his name, Jones?
Luke Jones.
Luke Jones, when they came on, they were going to be this and that. That's a fair point. They haven't really developed on to go on to be great Wallabies by any form.
Yeah, and you look at the other code, Rugby League, what Melbourne have done down there, they do totally the opposite. So in an environment that is solely focused on AFL, you've got the chance just to bunker down. But I think if Melbourne had the opportunity to start again, I reckon they would. They've made some pretty poor recruitment choices over the years. They haven't got the model right. It'd be one of the best cities to live in if they can just get their infrastructure right. So maybe the appointment of Baden Stevenson as CEO is the first step. You get rid of the coach. Is Morgan Tuinui the answer? He probably needs a better squad to play the game he wants to play. But, Tony McGahan will have to be the one to go. Look, I think Nick Stiles, should have a look at himself. The alternative is, Simon Cron's waiting in the wings.
Yeah, he's the obvious selection at the moment, isn't he? He's done wonderful things with Norths and
Australian 20s at the moment, right?
Yeah,
and he's the head coach of Australian 20s, and they're doing a great job. And the way he deals with them, he really sets them up. He said they're 18, they're 19, they've got to learn this stuff, but that was an acceptable performance. But look, they've gone over there, and for the first time, I think at this part of the tournament, we're in the running to make the semis. Normally, we're playing for 7th and 8th versus Georgia and Namibia or something. So we're we're a good chance over there. So
Pete, just on that, you're also a fellow Aussie under 21 player.
Yeah.
What have you made so far from what you've seen of the Aussie under 20s? And how important is this stage of their career for them?
Look, I think it's really important. I think the fact they've got Simon Cron in there is a sign that they want to get the best coaches coaching at this level. They've got the Super 20s, which is a great advertisement for the young rugby in this country, and they've brought some of the Australian Sevens players across. Kenny Well, Henry Hutchinson, all guys that are performing at that level, which shows the seriousness of this, and they've got lots of Super Rugby players who are running around in that competition. So I think it's a pivotal step. It's great for confidence. In Australian rugby at the moment, we really need...
My apologies.
Yeah, we really need to build the confidence at all levels and teach these guys how to win. So I think it's a great stepping stone, and look, I really hope Australia can do the job. But they're up against a pretty formidable England team on Friday morning. who beat Samoa by 70, and we beat Samoa 36-28 or something. So
Right.
England have really put their resources behind this, and the Kiwis have been pretty poor in the last couple of years, and they're starting to play really strong footy too. So
You can really start to see how in the Northern Hemisphere, how they're turning things around, and that focus they're putting in, getting things right early, and the resources that they're pooling. Because you look at the stats from the Northern Hemisphere teams in those under 20 games over the last few years, it was always Southern Hemisphere dominated, and you see it coming through now. The Poms are really starting to shake things up.
yeah, no, it's great for rugby. So Australia's just got to jump
is.
on the bandwagon. Maybe this is the opportunity.
So just quick last one on the coaches. To me, it seems like outside of Simon Cron, I mean, in terms of are there any other coaches out there? Because we talk a lot about the lack of coaching depth. Is there anyone else out there that you've seen that you think, yep, this one's to watch out for, or is it as thin as it seems?
Oh, look, I'm a big fan of Dan Parks.
Yep.
I think first and foremost, a coach has to be able to understand the game, but the hardest part of a coach is articulating your vision, right, and getting the players to play the way they can. And I've always been a big advocate of Dan Parks. I think he sees the game really clearly. He's played behind a Scotland pack that, over in Scotland they changed the names to forwards to not so forwards because they never did go forward in that direction. So he learnt to direct his team around the park and the way he talks to the players. And I'm a huge fan of him. And on the back of Jake Gordon, he worked very hard with Jake Gordon,
right,
and you can see some of the results. So he takes a lot of pride in his players.
And the good thing is, if we ever have any issues with restarts, you've got a real master there.
Well, he did say that they have confirmed that he will be doing the kickoff for Australian rugby, riding out that little van with a helmet on, and then he'll be doing the kickoff for the
world
Australia versus
record
Scotland.
for most restarts, mate. He's experienced campaigner.
And they should look at the NRC. They should use that as a vehicle. Like Darren Coleman's had huge success and just topped off Manly in the Shoot Shield. So, give those guys a go. Put them into some structured environments. This time here, maybe Darren or someone should have gone on the trip to Japan with the Waratahs. I think there should just be more forward thinking, and they are trying to bring in this coaching summit or this coaching coordinator. But to be honest, it doesn't take that long to come into a decision like that, put someone in and lay the foundation. So look, I think there's a lot of good coaches out there, and they just got to use the different levels to highlight them. Give a bit more press to the coaches as well.
Yeah, yep, 100%. We're going to be right back after this break where we're going to talk about the upcoming games. No Super Rugby next weekend, but we are going to be looking at the British and Irish Lions, which will be huge, and the Wallabies versus Fiji. You're on Super Aussie Rugby, powered by Intrust Super. Thanks for joining us on Super Aussie Rugby, powered by Intrust Super. Before we get into the weekend's test match predictions and crystal balling, let's have a quick look at your Facebook status update. For those who are just joining us, Pete lost the tipping competition last week, which I won, which gave me the right to hijack his Facebook page. And basically, he doesn't really have access to his account until the end of the show. I've put up a beautiful love poem there. Silky, our producer, sitting there, just flicking through Facebook now, mate. Any responses from punters out there?
Well, I don't have any of Pete's personal messages, but Thomas Cooligan wants to know if you're having beers on Friday night, Pete.
Yeah, sure, mate. That'll be confirmed.
With that poetry did it for him.
And
Beers and dinner, and he said, just sent me a private one saying, don't invite anyone else.
and look, you've got fans in the States. Stephen Morris, in the middle of the night over here in San Fran, fighting insomnia and loving the show, boys.
Mozza.
The great Moriarty is a mad, passionate South African, coached down at the Mighty Beasties for many years and a bit of a rugby great. Very good. So, mate, we will be expecting, hopefully off air, I can read some of these personal messages. No?
Yeah, that's fine, mate.
Anyway,
That's fine.
we'll see. So, mate, moving on to the test matches. First up, Wallabies playing Fiji in Melbourne this weekend. I think it's actually going to be hard to tell which one's Fiji and which one's Australia with our current squad. Who are you? Who are you picking? What are you thinking? How do you see this coming about?
Look, I'm really excited by it. If Checker picks some of these young guys coming through, I think Ned Hannigan should get a run. I think that Hardwick should get a run. And if we look at it as a continued progression, and as he said, it's like climbing Everest when we face the All Blacks in a couple of months. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what kind of mindset they take into this game. It's a huge game for Australian rugby. As I said, it's a pivotal point. This is a chance to really lay bare what our game's about. This is the best time of the year because it's an international game. So, you know, you look at the NRL, they just play state on state. We get to expand ourselves in the AFL. So this is a chance for us to really elevate it, get the players out there, get them out into the media, but also put on a really good performance against the Fijians.
Yeah, and I think a lot of maybe even casual fans don't realise the extent to which rugby, with its international flavour, all the different characteristics that the different nations bring. And, you know, for those people watching it, expect a lot of flair when you're watching the Fijians. We'll expect Australia to win and win well, but the Fijians are always very entertaining and pretty to watch.
Yeah, it'd be a great game.
Yeah. Now, the real big one. Let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, coming up in a little while will be the British and Irish Lions versus the All Blacks. Mate, the British Lions are playing the Auckland Blues this Saturday and then the Crusaders, I think, next Tuesday night. How important are these games?
Oh, hugely important. You know, that they came off the plane on Wednesday and they played against a pretty spirited New Zealand Barbarians team.
With not a lot of names. They just all necked up and ripped in.
100%. So, look, you can forgive that kind of jet lag, but there was over 300, 400, 500 tests playing with England. You know, they had...
That could have been a starting lineup to look at that team.
So, look, it gave them the wake-up call they deserve. I think Gatland's son in the provincial team played really, really well. So playing against his dad as the coach of the Lions, he really directed the team around. But look, the Lions are a classy team. They've come here on a mission. Auckland will challenge, and Auckland have picked 6 All Blacks in their team. Sonny Bill is starting at 12. Hopefully he gets through his injury, and he will he'll put his best foot forward to start the following week. They're playing tomorrow night, actually, which will be on Foxtel, and it'll be a huge game. Yeah, they're playing tomorrow night. So I think you know, shit got real for the Lions when they played provincial team.
Yeah.
And look, you don't look at it
big
as
wake up call early on.
100%. And I don't think I didn't look at that as a poor Lions performance. I looked at it as a good New Zealand Barbarians performance. You know, from a mental state. So the Lions had to work for it. Hopefully, we see an improvement because I'm looking forward to the clash against the All Blacks, and I'm en route to see the game in Wellington on the 1st of July.
Beautiful. Well, it's just one of those things as well. It's well documented just how bloody good the All Blacks are at the moment. We all know that, but you can't underestimate, you know, the strength of bringing 4 nations together like this across the UK and Ireland, and obviously you've got the core of the team being a Welsh team. Criticisms around Warren Gatland, you know, the idea of playing this, what do they call it? Warren ball. Yeah, this sort of crash ball style, big forwards, and then the big centres sort of hitting it up. Do they have the game to beat the All Blacks come that time?
Oh, look, it's a tough one. You know, I think the All Blacks got way too much class for everyone because they've got the ability to change their style of game at any one point in time. You know, they've got the smarts around the 9 and 10. They've got arguably the best player in Beauden Barrett, and they've got Beauden Barrett's brother, who's pretty much starting his own name with Geordie Barrett.
It'd have to be you'd have to say behind Ben Smith, he'd have to come on off the bench, wouldn't he? Geordie Reid, his form's been irresistible.
Geordie Barrett, yeah.
Geordie Barrett, sorry,
yeah. Yeah, 100%. So, look, I think they've got a lot to pick from, and they've got a few out as well, injured. So, I think the All Blacks got way too much class, but hopefully the Welsh, the English, the Irish, they can pull together and they can make it one hell of a game, because even if Australians watch that, at least it might give them a bit of energy to support our teams as well, because we have an interesting test series coming up with Fiji, Scotland and Italy. And as I said, it is the most crucial point in Australian rugby to date, in my opinion. And
huge call today.
Look, I think it is. I think it's because during this period we should have an answer on if the teams are going to go. We'll have an answer on what the new structure of Australian rugby should look like when the board goes and the CEO goes. And I think this is that moment we have to have. I keep talking about it, but if we don't view it like that, then we continue to go down further. We have to draw that line in the sand and say we've hit the bottom, and this test series gives us that chance to elevate, because we're all passionate rugby fans, but I haven't got much more in me.
Yeah, I hear you. We're hitting the bottom of the reserve tank, aren't we? Yeah, so crucial, I think, for both the Lions and for the Wallabies in this. Playing games you're expected to win. I mean, the Lions just got away with it, but you'd think, God, if they start losing to the Blues and then, start losing to the Hurricanes or whoever it may be, it's really going to set a bad precedent for their confidence going into this. Same with the Wallabies. Have to perform against these teams before they come Bledisloe Cup time.
100%.
So, thanks very much for joining us. We've enjoyed having you on the live Facebook feed again. No doubt Pete's going to be scurrying back to his Facebook account to try to save some face afterwards. But Pete, also, thank you for being a good sport, mate, and for cheers, buddy.
No worries, mate.
For the show. You are on Super Aussie Rugby, powered by Intrust Super. See you next time.
Cheers.